Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are on this fast forward planet, still wrapped in a pandemic, slowly trying to figure out how to get through that with a much better outcomes than we've had the first year. It's been an insane time, and it's been a year when a big chunk of the world that had normal activity be face to face, whether in a classroom or in a boardroom or most jobs, everyone scrambled to get into the online space. What do we do to connect there? Zoom became the default option for many. Skype, my friends who were doing Skype as scientists for years had found Skype to be very useful, but it was all very two-dimensional and very much in boxes and very much feeling like a compromise. And most everything we do online is a compromise compared to the human experience of which includes touch and smell and direct contact and shaking of hands. And we've all been scrambling for alternatives. There's this one new one that I've discovered recently through our journalism school's Brown Institute for Media Innovation is called Ohyay. There you can see their very bright graphic homepage. And as you see here, their vision is to create a space to play and build in, to connect with family or students. The platform excited me. I got to know it through the Christmas party of my colleagues at the Brown Institute and thought, wow, you'll see in a minute how it works. A bunch of rooms connecting. Anyone can wander. There's an exploratory aspect to it as opposed to some of that sort of structured part of Zoom where you all zoom into your breakout rooms and zoom somewhere else. You feel like you're being channeled through the Harry Potter chimneys with flue powder. And here, I think there's an alternative that I feel is quite exciting. It's one of many. It's an emergent arena. And my goal today on Thriving Online, the Monday webcasts of our Earth Institute initiative here at Columbia, is to test, where can we go with this? These are all great uses. There are party sites now too, and as many of you have all I'm sure experienced. So I've got the two of the founders of Ohyay here today, Andrew Lin and Walter Lin, and also Zeev Schneider, who's the creative technologist at Columbia's, again, at the Brown Institute for Media Innovation, who was an early explorer on this particular platform. It's great to have you all here. Good morning. And my name is Andy Revkin, and this is our journey. So how are you all doing, first of all? Zeev, how are you? How are things in the journalism school?
Good. We're working on programming for the semester, and good. We've adjusted.
Yeah, and your title is creative technologist, which I think is pretty interesting implicitly. What do you see that as meaning?
Yeah. Creative technologies, it's always something that I have to explain, and I think people do creative technology in different ways. I specifically focus on immersive technologies for journalism, volumetric capture, 3D photography, things like that, and researching kind of innovations and technologies that are just recently possible, and how can we use them to tell stories. So that's specifically my focus, but I think there's different creative technologists that do it in a different way.
Yeah. So my journey into this arena, I started a blog at the New York Times in 2007, and it was mostly words and pictures. I'd been doing video journalism since I went to the North Pole in 2003 and brought a video camera with me. I figured if I'm going to the North Pole, I better capture whatever's going on there with every possible medium. Someone while I was on the sea ice at the North Pole, there was an early editor at the Times on the web desk who said, let's do a reader Q&A. And so I had to do it by satellite phone. I wasn't like online getting text messages. And so we did a Q&A from the North Pole sea ice. And so I just got really interested in this stuff. 2008, I went down to University of Delaware to give a lecture. As you see here, I wrote about this. It was University of Delaware was an early adopter of Second Life, sort of having a virtual campus. I thought this is really cool. And so I was giving a lecture with 300 people in the room, and then a few people were there online. It was still kind of early. And it was really weird, though. It was clearly glitchy because you can see there I was upside down in the Jumbotron, whatever you call that. So now that was again early days, and now you guys have created this space that we're going to talk about. So Walter and Andrew, what was your path into this? Like, how what was your vision with Ohyay initially?
Good question. So I guess we can tell you a bit about like just how we got started. I guess it was back in April. Walt and I were just trying to start a new venture. We didn't have a specific area of focus, really. I think we were playing around actually with like 3D captures and 360 cameras and stuff, coincidentally. And it was just the beginning of the pandemic. So Walt and I have been working together for
10 years.
10 years, almost. Yeah, 10 years now.
Yeah, almost.
We've done a couple different startups and different projects together over that time period, and we were always used to just like starting things in person, just because it's like just we would just be in an office and just brainstorming. And we found that like the tools for doing that online were not great. We tried to have like a Google Meet that we just left open all day, and I don't know. There were so many things that seemed wrong with that, and just like just the dynamics weren't right. And so since we had all this free time, I guess we were brainstorming. We're like, well, let's try to like fix this problem first, and then we'll move on to like actually doing the real thing. That's cool. So we actually started out kind of building like collaboration tools, sort of going deep on like multiple screens being shared and being able to control each other's windows and stuff across our two machines remotely. And I guess like in the midst of that, somebody came along and they're like, hey, aren't you building like video chat apps right now? Like, can you build us a special one to do this? They had a very specific kind of workflow they were looking at, where people sit in a circle and they pass like a talking piece around. And we're like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, easy, no problem, because we were like pretty well versed at that point with like just video chat technologies. And so in the middle of building that, we were kind of like, wait, why do you need software engineers to make this kind of thing? Like, this didn't seem like and like, also, how many different workflows do people want, like in the world of online interaction? So yeah, based on sort of that notion, we're like, well, that's weird. Like, why can't somebody just like build a PowerPoint slide that's like a video chat? And that's kind of where this whole idea came from. That's like
so interesting. And people will see in a few minutes, but as I've seen it and started to dive in, I've gotten the sense, man, wouldn't it be great to like, instead of do a PowerPoint, do a series of rooms? But you'll know what I'm talking about in a minute. It's sort of like, here's room number one. It's sort of that general getting to know you. And then here's the issue, have it all around you, discuss it a little bit. And then here's the challenge. And now let's talk about how do we figure it out. So that's what excites me. And I've seen the initial, some of the initial products that have come out of this. I'll show one. Just I think you all know about this, including Ziv. This was a film festival, is that right? In Europe?
The International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam. They have a new media part of the program called DocLab. And this year, DocLab has built their online exhibition with Ohyay.
Yeah, and I when I saw it, again, I love this. Here's like, okay, this is how you play. This is how you do this thing. Enter here. It's kind of like a Alice in Wonderland. There's this mapped experience. Okay, I get the rough idea. Digital performances. You click here, and here's a series of obviously projects. And anyone who's a teacher or thinking about communicating work around a particular an initiative with multiple activities, this feels pretty organically cool. How hard was it, Andrew, to go from the idea to actually the execution of this kind of thing? And then we'll move over there.
How hard was it?
Technically, I know these things all seem from the outside like, well, that's pretty cool. And people will see the back end, but it's kind of wild to me, not as a technologist.
Yeah, I guess so we started prototyping just the first like the first notion of being able to like drag and drop together like one of these interfaces. I think it was in early June, and then I think it was like 2 weeks later we were able to build like a very primitive version of Jeopardy, where like without writing any code, you could kind of drag a bunch of boxes to be the different clues for Jeopardy, and then like a live host would be able to change the layouts on screen to sort of like zoom in the question or the answers for Jeopardy, and then the contestants could kind of answer the questions, and you could sort of keep score just by editing like some text fields as you go. But that was sort of just like the very basic beginnings. I don't know. I feel like since then we've been just like extremely busy, just trying to service all the requests from all of our like early adopters. I feel like that a lot of people have a lot of ideas and they have visions for these things they want to build online, and we just spend tons of time trying to generalize those ideas and put them into the platforms that everybody can access them. And that part is I would say is quite challenging, just because there's like such a wide variety of scenarios that people want to attempt. I think it's sort of proving out that our hypothesis that there are like an infinite number of online workflows that you want to support, and that building any one app won't satisfy them all, versus letting the creators build them hopefully will satisfy the needs of everybody over time.
Well, and that's why that's where we're gonna go into the back end now, and we'll sort of mute our voices here and move over there in a second. I'm just showing you the back end of the doorway I've kind of been building for my portal, for my set of rooms, or my office, quote unquote. And I got some video from it's National Park Service, so it's a public domain. But what it was really cool about getting to know the back end of what you're doing, including this community you have on Discord of beta users, is you're basically enabling a huge amount of experimentation, and someone saying, "Oh, wow, that's cool, but or that's cool, and both the buts and the ands feel like they must be a fantastic part of the, what then leads you to think about next steps. But it's sort of a liberating version of a tool, as opposed to waiting and coming out with something really neat and clean. Was that intentional, like to have the community sort of be part of the genesis?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, I guess we have this notion that like online real-time interaction is like still in its infancy, and so that for us to be dictating like how people should interact online is premature. Like, we really should be like providing tools to allow people to tell us how online interaction should happen. That's kind of like one of the founding philosophies of Ohyay, is that we don't want to prescribe how people converse and interact online. We want to just provide them with the tools and like the platform for letting them express how they want to interact online.
All right, so let's try. This will be a little rough and ragged here, because I tried this last week when I did a concert from the Capitol steps virtually, and I had some echoing and stuff like that. So let's see if we can do this in a way where we're all going to go mute for a second, everyone out there listening. And if you're out there, please do share and post some questions and comments as we're going to migrate over to this other space. And I'm going to pop in through the Mount Hood on my thing here is the door to my office. So I'm going to move into my office, and I'm going to mute myself here. Here's the goofy part. I think I did that wrong. So anyone who was watching probably saw stuff but didn't hear anything. So now it's going to change. 1 second.
Hello.
Yeah, it's tempting not to.
Yeah, just start playing.
It's hard not to sometimes.
Oh, Andy, sorry to interrupt, but you might need to unmute yourself on Streamyard. If you did, but some people are saying they can't hear. They can hear us, but not you.
Let's try this another way.
Should we all
So,
mute on
audience,
stream?
can you hear me now?
I think they can hear us because it's coming through this tab, but
Oh,
it
yeah.
might not be. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, we'll all work out. So tell us a little bit more about your visions for this, because I presumably. Oh, Michael Powers said can't hear Andy. I'm going to say, how about now?
Yeah, it seems like you're coming through StreamYard now.
How
Yep.
about
Okay.
now?
Yeah.
Ah, good. Oh, hello, Andre Kodrescu, one of my poet friends.
Can you also unmute in Ohyay?
In both? But won't that create an echo? Well, we'll find out. Let's see. Can you hear us? Hear me?
Okay. I think it's good now.
Maybe we're okay. All right. So, again, hello, everybody. This is the wacky world of online multi-platform experimentation. I'm trying to take you into the back end of Ohyay, ohyay.co, through a wider casting through Streamyard, which I've been using since almost a year ago for holding conversations around sustainability and communication. And I'm trying to figure out how to go beyond this being what it is. Oh, and I see you've added that perspective change here. I've been wanting to do that. As you can see, is that Andrew who's sliding back and forth?
I think Walt is playing around.
Oh, it's Walt.
little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. There are parameters here that can be experimented with. And now let's give folks a taste of, maybe let's all migrate to the kelp forest, if that's okay, which is a cool aspect. It's a room that was created by someone else, and I added some features to it. So hold on, we're going to go to the kelp forest. Wait 1 second. I got to go there too. Where did it go? Ah, there we go.
I like the lights.
Yeah. So when I say immersion, I mean immersion. So here we are underwater. Someone created the basic template, and I've been fiddling with adjustments, and I'm sure you guys will come up with some new things to do. What's interesting is there's sort of a video playing in the background that someone found it's actually like disco stage lights that if you put behind kelp, creates a more dynamic, multidimensional underground seascape. And,
yeah, we haven't seen this room before. Someone from the community made this.
Yeah, I know. Your community gallery is getting pretty interesting. And again, what's cool is you can take one of those rooms and then start to fiddle with it and make it your own. And here, I have friends at the Monterey Bay Aquarium who have they have web cameras. They have live webcams from the canyon there off of the ocean, in the ocean off of Monterey in California. So I think this way to have their webcam could be the back image here, conceivably, unless I'm missing something. And,
Yeah,
It's
certainly.
a live video, right? Like a live video background.
Yeah, it's a webcam. I think they have webcams of some of their indoor aquaria as well. So the Bronx Zoo could have a interesting new way to connect you with the wildlife that's in captivity at zoos. I think that's one other possibility. And you think, well, okay, you still have to get some stuff done, right? It's not just being in pretty places. we do have to talk about things. And so maybe we'll go to the screening room, the Lenfest screening room up the top there.
Yep. Sure. Yep.
So, you know, we can sit here and not be in such a distracting space and show film or the like. Here I've got set up, I think this was
initiative on communication and
yeah, here's a little
sustainability
talk
at
I
the
gave
Art Institute.
at the very beginning of our
Not at the
Thriving
journalism
Online
school. I work with people there.
project.
I felt
There's still
the,
some limitations.
the Earth has
You
this
can't
system,
fast
it's a
forward and
communication system
slow it down.
that
You
envelops
still
the
can
planet
do a
Earth
basic share screen,
that can do
you can
things,
clap,
for better or worse.
and
we're not
there is
really
even a
studying it
turd
and testing
emoji,
it the same way
which
we
is
would
kind of
if we
interesting.
discovered some new ecosystem
Oh,
in the
and there's
field.
audio. Look at that. I didn't even know that was possible. It's just such a great talk. Oh my God.
And the communication, the information environment is
Okay, okay, guys. Okay.
than the geophysical, biological.
That's pretty fantastic. So, and this is actually the Lenfest Center for the Arts at Columbia. It's from our webpage. So our webpage could be, you know, a room, like that line between a space, between a web presentation of a journalism school as Ziv is at, or this Lenfest Center for the Arts doesn't have to be a page. It could be a room, and a room with a door to another room. And that's what I think we're kind of seeing, the capacity to break down some of that, that sort of mental limitation of what you can and can't do in different places. I think that's pretty cool. So Ziv, I know you're doing some stuff. You have classrooms set up, right, at the journalism school or elsewhere? I know you're working on some things.
Yeah, so some of our staff, Michael Christian and Juan Francisco Arriaga, they're using Ohyay for their class Points Unknown that is taught in collaboration with also GSAP, the architecture school. I've set up some classroom spaces. Oh, and our director, Mark Hansen, is also using it for his classes. And I've done class setups and also party setups, karaoke's, watch parties, a memorial space for an avatar that was part of the Doc Lab program this year, and that's kind of how
that was pretty cool.
We had a memorial service there where the team members spoke, and there were emojis flying in the air. Yeah, it's been really great because we've had these ideas, for example, like of making a flower arrangement where people could come and leave flowers, and the Ohyay team was like, well, how can we make that happen? You know, the kind of finding a way to program that with the system that they had, and I feel like there's a lot of flexibility to do these like custom. You can use the system in a very simple way, just like pull templates and just use it as is, and it's already pretty fun. But then there's all these custom interactions that you could program with just a little bit more setup.
Yeah. And presumably you explore quite a few of these kinds of things yourself, Ziv, right? So you're diving in here with particular interest because it's got that plasticity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great, like fast and a fun way to make immersive experiences online. And I mean, the great thing, I mean, I work in immersive technologies in like volumetric 360, that whole space, but it's not very accessible in the sense that the hardware, like there's a whole like barrier of entry, and making things in the browser is just, it's so easy to get people to participate and join and enjoy. So yeah.
And what I really like is that Discord, the community is just really dynamic here too. There's a lot of sharing. It's not proprietary in that sense, and that's where Walt and Andrew, I think, that model of sort of open source model seems really exciting to me.
Yeah, and I think it's been so wonderful to get to work really closely with creative people like Zeev. And our main mission is to empower people just like Zeev to be able to create these really creative, immersive experiences. And so, one of our focuses has been just working really closely and talking with a lot of the early adopters and the early creators. And so, we were very fortunate to get a chance to collaborate with Zeev on some of her spaces and some of the events that she did. And we actually, there are a lot of things that she asked for that the platform couldn't do at the time. And she's had such great ideas. And then, we were able to take that back and say, okay, how can we generalize this into building, to putting like building blocks into the platform to let people do these kind of things. So anything from like having like a line and a procession to like a map style where there's a big overview of the whole space. So there's a lot of different things that we've been able to do with her on some of the events. So we really tried to work really closely with the early creators and talk to them and learn from them.
And Stanford, there's some other universities using it, right? Let's switch to the Maine coast just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the Maine coast and we can keep chatting there.
Maine coast.
Maine coast, yeah.
Nice.
It's very peaceful.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fire's
very
going.
serene.
And there should be loons in the background. Loons and some very quiet other Maine-y noises. Crackling fire. And feel free to fiddle. I know Andrew and Walt, you're good at.
I can't help myself.
I know. You were already.
Can I put potatoes in there?
We should, right? Or like some lobsters on a pot. That'd be great. So I was just saying there are other universities that are already using this pretty actively.
Yeah, that's right. We have a number of universities that are using the platform. We're actually super fortunate to meet a professor at Stanford pretty early on in our product's life. His name is Kayvon. How do you say his last name? Andrew Fatahalian.
Yeah, I think so.
Italian.
He saw the platform after an event and then reached out to us. And we've actually he actually is consulting for us, and he taught his computer science class at Stanford on the platform, and really has been pushing the boundaries of the classroom experience. And also he's built out a number of parties that he's hosted for people. He did a party for Stanford faculty and for friends. So I've been really fortunate to get to work really closely with him. And he wrote a blog post recently about his experience and published it. And so we actually have a number of universities that are now using the platform, both for teaching classes, doing things like office hours, doing student study sessions, and hangout spaces for students. And so it seems like it's been a really good fit for us.
Yeah,
I think through Kayvon, the Brown Institute kind of learned about this platform probably through Kayvon and Stanford. It kind of continued from there.
So it's kind of wending its way out through the universe.
Yeah, we've been lucky that we've gotten so many, like a lot of word of mouth referrals. It's been really, I feel like the product is really, for certain people, that they just really see the potential and they're excited to try it out.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, Skype a Scientist was an early way to connect scientists, even in the field, with students in classrooms. And it feels like this could be integrated beautifully. Every scientist or lab could have a homeroom, essentially, a space that conveys what they do, a series of spaces. And then imagine that integrating with that capacity to, quote unquote, visit with students anywhere.
Yeah, we've seen for a couple of universities, some of the research labs have started to set up like a digital venue, with like different desks and offices for all the people in the organization. And in fact, like we ourselves use Ohyay as our virtual office space too, where each of us has a desk, and it makes it very easy when you want to have a conversation that you can just drop into their room and start a conversation. When everybody's online like that, it sort of removes a lot of the friction of like setting up a meeting on Zoom or Google Meet.
Yeah, and there's a doorbell feature I noticed that's kind of cool, where you can
Yeah, that's kind of a new experimental feature.
Yeah,
that
what
we-
is that?
Let me go
the
to
doorbell
let's
is-
go to Capitol Steps. I think I actually built one there. It's kind of funky.
Sure.
Let's all go to the Capitol Steps and pretend we were there last week.
The cowbell is a doorbell.
Well, I did. It's not hooked. I don't think it's hooked up to anything yet.
Yeah. So the idea with the doorbell is when somebody clicks on it, it'll basically send a text message to you based on whatever number you configure it with. And the idea is that, like, if you have a space that you're not in 24/7 and somebody shows up, they just have a way to like let you know that they're there.
Mm.
We kind of have this experiment in mind, where one day maybe people will have like their little store or like their office just sitting on a street somewhere in Ohyay, I guess, and that you could go up to the front and like ring the doorbell, and then they would get a text message and come, go to their computer or hop on Ohyay and just be able to let you in and talk to you or whatever it may be. So we thought it could be a fun interaction for people and sort of like link it outside of sitting in front of your computer.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And again, I think we're just in the early days of figuring this out. But you've already discussed some ways that this can play out as a collaborative space. I think it still has this potential to pull folks in. I didn't build a room yet, but you could have a wildfire room. Like, okay, communities across the West are now vulnerable to wildfire in ways that are hugely of their own making, along with climate change kind of amping up the risk. But so let's go to the wildfire room, and here's the data on your housing. Here's your housing map, and here's where you're going to be building. And then we're going to go to the next room, but only after we agree we're going to solve this, or at least start to. And then you go to the next room and you say, okay, let's look at our zoning. And you could have the zoning data there and say, well, have a wildfire ecologist there and say, well, okay, this is what's going to happen if you keep doing this, and say, okay, well, what could we adjust in our zoning? And then you go to the next room. So I think that kind of thing, it can even be taken beyond sort of the comfort level factor just in the workspace to an actual solution space. There are folks like Arizona State has a decision theater they've been doing for 10 or 15 years where there's data coming in and, and tough problems, insecurity, whatever. And they hash out the issues in sort of a gamey scenario-based way. And this feels like it could integrate there too. So I'm really excited. Let's see if there are a couple of questions that came in. Makaron Boot says, deep fake, anyone? It's kind of a funny thought that we're building a simulacrum of reality. Andrei Kodresky was asking, is this user-generated VR essentially? And that's an interesting question. Is that it's that letting go aspect of what you described, just creating an environment where people can kind of figure their own way. It does feel sort of like that. Is that what this is?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, it's not VR in the traditional sense where like you're putting on goggles and like, taking over all your senses to immerse yourself in like interactive content. But it is funny that like, because your video is being projected into that space, you sort of are like, I don't know, I've been calling it like sort of avatarizing yourself with your own video into these spaces. Like, I don't know, it is funny that like, from what we've seen is, the environment that your video lives in actually affects the way you feel and the way you converse with the others around you. Like, there's been a bunch of times we have this one scene that's quite popular, a room that's popular that has like a fireplace in it, and the fire's crackling, and like we've done some like color adjustments so it looks like the glow of the fire is like flickering on your face. And when people come in, they're like, oh, it feels warm in here. Like they actually have this notion as if like they are feeling the sensations of being in that room, even though it's just their projection of themselves into that room. And so in some ways, yeah, maybe it gives people like, a partial feeling of that, of being immersed inside that scene. And that in that way, it's kind of similar to VR, but it's certainly like, it's like a much like lower friction way to experience that kind of immersion, because you don't have to have the equipment or anything. You just go in your browser and jump into a space, and it's very easy to transition between spaces.
Yeah, let's go to. Oh, hold on, I had it here a second ago. The treehouse, and chat there a bit.
Nice.
And music, you know, you have background music and stuff, which I think is good too. You can always play with that. I had the ambient sounds of these different locations, and that really does seem to make a difference too in terms of affecting people. We don't yet.
Yeah,
there's no
for sure.
There's no smell vision yet via the internet, but maybe that's coming too at some point. The smell of a nice cafe, that coffee brewing.
that feels very 1990s web.
Yeah. Although it's funny, there's a climate scientist at the Earth Institute, Marco Tedesco. I should talk to him. He has this vision of adding an olfactory experience to presentations on like the rainforest, where you literally have a scratch and sniff, like a series of cards. You could have a little wallet of scratch and sniff things, and so now he'll say, "Okay, scratch number 3." So while you get that sort of moisty, soily smell coming as you're looking at the forest floor. So I don't know, maybe something's going to come. Let me see if there are any more questions that have come in.
But there's definitely an impact to how you're presented in the scene and like proximity to other people. I remember I was in a restaurant setting that Doc Lab had for the creators, and all of a sudden, and we were randomized, and all of a sudden I was sitting next to someone who's like an idol of mine. And like I was, you know, just feeling yeah, I don't know, a little overwhelmed, but also honored, and it was but just by the proximity, you know, sitting next to someone in a virtual table.
Yeah. Michael Powers asks here, how interactive can each room be? Any limits? I guess in terms of interactivity, he might be saying, what are the capacities of visitors? And I know there's a whole menu of who can share video or who can do other things. I don't know if you have your own sense of an answer to that question.
Endless.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because we keep trying to push the boundaries on what you can do with interactivity. So let's see. The sort of the basics are, as a regular user, you can move around where your video is. So Andy just demonstrated that, and so you can drag and drop yourself to any of the sort of video slots that the person has pre-programmed, who created the room. So I'm moving around a little bit, and as Ziva was saying, it actually completely changes the dynamics if, you know, the two of us are sitting here talking versus, you know, if I moved and was very small up here like this.
Right.
It feels very different. And so sometimes you actually, you know, if you want to join the conversation, you can kind of move down, just hitting undo to go back to where I was down here.
Right.
But we also have we have action buttons where you can basically, without writing code, but through an interface that we have, you can program out different actions that users in the room can take. And we've started pushing the boundaries of this. So some examples of things that we've built have been, or some of the creators in the community have built are, we have some really cool games that happen now. So we mentioned Jeopardy earlier, but there's a number of different games. So board games, card games. We're actually working on a casino right now where you can play blackjack, you can play roulette, things like that. So, you know, you have chips. You can drag the chips around the table. We have cards that you can deal out. You can shuffle them, things like that. And that was all. You can program all of that into the interface with no code, just using these buttons in the interface that we have.
Right.
I think there's a lot of different interactive kind of things. Like, let's see, Andrew, what are some of the other like really good?
Yeah, so we're not. I guess we're just trying to provide like primitives that allow people to construct these games. Like, for example, in any given room, you can make any element in the room draggable or rotatable, resizable, and so we're trying to just like facilitate the creation of like new kinds of interaction. So like you could build like a chessboard and make the pieces draggable, and then we have like timer elements that you can add in order to like, use as a chess timer, but you could also use those timers, in a meeting where, you have 3 minutes to answer a question, or in like a speed dating interface where, everybody is just mixing with a different person for 5 minutes at a time. So it's kind of like we're trying to supply like a whole library of different like useful widgets that hopefully can be repurposed in a lot of different ways, and then it's sort of up to like the room designer to like combine them in ways to make an interactive experience. But done a large number of like just like puzzles and like fun interactive multiplayer games that are pretty easy to wire together without writing any code.
There's a related question that came in from Melinda Miller on Facebook. She says, can you describe how you might use this for cocktail party type environment with people mingling and multiple conversations going on at once? Do you need to move to different rooms? Well, I know 2 answers, but you probably know them. There's the whisper.
You want to go?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so we've run lots of different kind of cocktail parties. It's a really good use case for the platform. Many companies have done happy hours or groups of friends and things like that. So what you're seeing here, I think that Andy is showing, is actually the back end of the system. And so if you are sort of a regular user in the experience, you won't see that left-hand pane that Andy has on the screen. This is just in the editor interface. But basically, the person who is creating the happy hour space, so you can have lots of different rooms.
Visible.
Oh yeah.
I just clicked into.
Back, Andy?
I clicked back to the full.
Oh yeah.
I clicked out of the backend. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no worries. So you can have any number of rooms in your space. The typical way that people navigate the rooms, the default way, is there's a left-hand navigation that will just list out all the different rooms that are in the space. But for a really large event, you can make a map. So it would sort of pull an overlay if you have a very big space.
Here, I'll pull up an example of this kind of map. Let me find a space here. Okay.
Oh yeah, this was from a recent event that we did. So this was sort of the lobby area that you would get dropped into, and then you could click on any of these to go into these different rooms. And so you can set up all the rooms to hold any number of people, any number from 0 to 400 people. For a typical sort of kind of like happy hour cocktail party thing, we typically find that that conversations sort of break down once you have too many people in them. I'm sure everyone has experienced this when you're on a large Zoom call of 30 people. It's impossible to have a conversation going, and then everyone will sort of just zone out. So we've actually seen through sort of a lot of events different kind of interactions. So one thing that we have is a whisper feature. And so if you hover over someone's face, there's a little ear that'll appear. There's actually 2 icons that'll appear. One is the ear, and if you click on that, you can talk just to that person. And so nobody else in the room can hear you. So there's a large conversation that's going on and you see one of your friends, you can click on the ear and just say, oh, hey, how's it going? Let's take a walk and go somewhere else and talk. And no one else in the room can hear it, so that you don't feel like you're interrupting the conversation. And I sort of alluded to the other icon that you can do, which is it's called the follow feature. And so if you hover over someone, there's a little walking figure, and if you click on that figure and the other person accepts, you will basically link up. And then if you go to a different room, you'll bring that person along with you. And so this is really useful to take people on tours, or if you see one of your friends and you sort of link up, you can go explore the space together, and then you could go find a private room that nobody else is in if you wanted to go chat there. And so we're sort of trying to recreate almost a little bit of the party-like atmosphere of a real-life cocktail party, where you are in one space together with a lot of people, but there are a lot of separate conversations that are going on.
It's really cool.
Yeah, the spatial audio. Zeev, do you want to explain that one?
Well, there's also a feature that emulates audio in a physical space. So the further you are from someone, the less you can hear them, and you can tweak it, the level of how the audio changes based on proximity. But let's say if I was sitting close to Andrew, we could hear each other well, and from this distance we couldn't hear each other at all. So that's also kind of I feel like a fun functionality to play with for a party situation.
Yeah, and this is all like flexible. Like the spatial audio feature that Zeev mentioned is like, it's just a configurable option, but it isn't like required. Like I know there are a number of platforms out there right now which sort of require you to move closer to each other. But for us, we just wanted to enable that as like a setting on a space that in case you want it, it's there for you, but it's not it's not like a built-in like thing that's required for all your spaces.
So this sort of comes back to our consistent theme of we're just trying to provide the building blocks to let people easily experiment and create their own experiences. And we're not trying to prescribe a specific way of interacting because everyone sort of has their own different use cases. And people will be experimenting and hopefully figure out better ways.
Yeah. So for example, like one thing that some people have experimented with is for like a cocktail party scene or space where there are, hundreds of people. Oftentimes, there's kind of people in each room having conversations, and there's always this kind of funny thing where like somebody drops into a room and like in the middle of the room and interrupts the conversation. So people have been experimenting with different layouts where you can sort of like masquerade through the rooms, and when you enter a room, you're very small on the side, so you don't really interrupt the flow of the existing conversations in the rooms. And that's just something that in our design tool you can just experiment with to see if it works better or not. And we're hoping that somebody one day will figure out the perfect cocktail party layouts and flow of people, and then like publish it to our gallery, and everybody can start to adopt those patterns that work the best.
Yeah, I think it's because I'll just throw in like another example too, because it's such an interesting, I think, scenario and point. And I think that audio is really important for creating a feeling of atmosphere. And so we have very flexible ways where you can pull in either audio at whatever volume you want from whatever room you want, or sort of random samples of audio. And so Zeev was mentioning that at this one party, the IDFA organization, they had this tradition where at the film festival in real life, they would get this big group together and they would all go to this Chinese restaurant and they would all sit at different tables, and that was this real life tradition that they had, and they wanted to recreate that as much as they could. And so we collaborated with them and a design agency they had to build out this Chinese restaurant experience. And I think there were, I don't know, maybe 12 tables, something like that. Does that sound right?
Yes.
And we actually had set it up so that when you were sitting at a table, you could overhear at a low volume snippets of the tables that were sort of next to you. So you sort of had this feeling that there was a little bit of the presence of the rest of the room, and that you could overhear a little bit of what was going on, and you could feel like that there are a lot of people here.
And I think the tables were also pre-assigned, and then at a certain point you could also move around between them. And I also like that certain parts of the table you were sitting behind like a plant or a bottle or something, just like in real life, that would hide your face. And some seats are better than others.
So interesting.
Yeah, sure. And there was sort of like there was an overview kind of map of all the tables, and from that you could hear little bits of random sampling of sort of everything. So it's a little bit sort of akin to the feeling of walking into a restaurant and there's sort of this great buzz, and you can hear that and feel that, and then you can choose a table to go in and actually start having a conversation.
So interesting. Now there's a whole landscape of platforms that seem to be emerging around some of these questions, and they all seem to have a purpose. Like this is very, very much a constrained room space, and then there's those sort of like, well, Gather. I went to some Gather event early on last year where they were just developing it, and it was more a mapped thing, more like Minecraft, and or something where you're a little more two-dimensional, and that feels like it has merits too. And they're all like, each approach seems to have some particular value, and this one is more intimate and environmental, and some of the other ones are more gamey and two-dimensional. It all seems useful, in different ways.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty fun time right now, just because I think everybody's sort of getting used to the idea of interacting online with video and audio, and yeah, I mean, we're just really excited to see where this all goes. Like I think that like the whole video game kind of layout is quite fun, especially for like sort of like world exploration. And then what we're trying to build is like slightly more like conversation centric, but we are looking at that stuff, and like we do have this notion of how to build like a big world to explore in Ohyay as well, by connecting spaces and allowing people to connect like a road system or a set of hallways or something to link all the different spaces that people are building together.
Yeah,
so it'll be really interesting to see where this all goes.
And you have that on Discord. There's that, again, a very active community, which is exciting too. I think that aspect of it feels really cool. It's not just when you. Well, do you want to talk about the fact that you're inviting people to be beta users right now? We could, but it's a community.
Totally.
It's very much an active community. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I think part of it just is sort of that goes along with our philosophy that like we actually don't know what the right ways to interact online are, and so like we're hoping to build like a great community of creatives that are gonna like together we'll all explore like what the best ways to interact online are, and we're sort of like in sort of an open invite stage right now where anybody can sign up and get access to our design tool, which we're calling Ohyay Studio, and start building spaces. And then it's been really fun. We have this Discord server where a bunch of the members of the community are just like asking questions or making suggestions, feature requests, bug reports, all like really just we're trying to establish a real like community driven kind of feel to Ohyay, because I think that's where we're going to figure out how all these interactions should happen, is just through everybody using it and sharing ideas and all the synergy that happens when like a large group of creatives get together and try to make cool stuff.
Do they actually? I hadn't asked this yet. Do they have a room? Is there an Ohyay space for creators to hang out, like an open room?
Oh, for all the creators to hang out, you mean?
On Discord, it's mostly textual interaction.
Oh yeah, interesting.
Should we have?
We did our first like community event last week, which went really well.
Oh, I missed it.
Well, we should just leave that space open.
Yeah. See, what I want to do at Columbia, I'm hoping, making sure the privacy issues, and we could talk about that if you want before we end. Before the security and privacy issues are, as long as they're addressed, to have sort of like student rooms where they can just build a room and hang out. I just met last week with a new PhD candidate at Columbia at the Earth Institute. She's obviously, everyone's dispersed across the world map, right, because of COVID, and she's having a hard time meeting and just chatting with other PhD candidates and postdocs, and we want to kind of create the opportunity space for that. So like right now, if you go on our Gmail calendar at Columbia, you can create a meeting, and that still has the archaic choose a room. There's like a physical room. Is anyone in room 217? And so it would be cool to sort of build a space where you could reserve or create a room to just as part of a calendar entry. It might be fun. We could talk about that.
Totally.
And this is a great start. I like what we've been describing here. I do think there's a lot of potential. Like right now we've had a poet, Andrei Codrescu, he's famed for his NPR, his public radio commentary for 20 years. He says, "How do you sign up?" And I directed him to your website. It's not hard.
Oh yeah, we just put the link here at the bottom of the room.
Yeah, ohyay.co.
Yeah.
And Andre, if we had a little more time, I'd ask you to come on in. You'd have a lot of fun in this space. And again, scientists can use it. Teachers can think about ways to use it. I already introduced you guys to my wife, who's an environmental educator. I think we're in the early stages of understanding, one, that online experience is a big part of all experience going forward, even after the pandemic ebbs, assuming we have herd immunity through vaccination. And it's not always a compromise. There's things I would like to shake your hands and clink a drink, but at the same time, someone from Singapore or Zimbabwe can be on here, assuming we have a world with enough bandwidth, which is still a challenge. I do these Sunday shows with musicians and artists, and there's a wonderful musician from Zambia who's been on a number of times, but always in a very limited way. So that's, having a true digitally connected world that's inclusive and creative and making the most of platforms like this has to have a lot more access to the internet too, as part of it too. But it just feels like I'm really glad that you're doing what you're doing. And this whole Thriving Online Monday series is exactly about how do you build a community to create something new? How do you test it? How do you iterate? So it's been fantastic to spend some time here with you. Maybe we could close things out in sequoias. So let's go to sequoias.
Nice.
It's very peaceful.
Yeah, so I'll type in a little thing here again. Oh, yay. Whoops. TO. Sign up to be a beta tester. Remember, yeah, there we go. See, look, I even figured out how to make it white. I'm not good at any of that stuff. So this is, I think, a cool portal. It's not the holodeck on the Star Trek, but it's kind of in that direction. And for the time we spend online, thinking about ways to spend that time more peacefully. And also the other aspect of this is face-to-face connectivity. If you go back to my Twitter thread this morning, anyone out there, I was describing how when I was writing my .earth blog at the New York Times, people were typing words at each other, throwing words at each other, really in mean-spirited ways, sometimes in the comment threads, like you see on Twitter and social media too much now. But when there's a face and an actual person who's inhaling and exhaling and trying to make the most of an experience, it makes a very big difference. It's the most important part of that online connectedness part, is the face-to-face part. So again, thank you all for being here today as part of the Thriving Online track of the Earth Institute Sustain What webcasts that I do.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. It's been really, really a fun time.
And I'd love to have you back. This is all iterative. I see these conversations always as strings, not as one-time events. Clearly, we're at the beginning of something here with making the most of the online information environment. And
totally,
it's good that
totally
you're digging in, and I'm happy to help keep that conversation going. And Ziv Schneider, thanks for being part of this today from the Brown Institute for Media Innovation.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And I would put up a note for what's coming next, but I haven't had time to build my next episodes. Yeah, everyone should just know that Sustain is a weekly, several times a week exercise in trying to make the most of the internet. And of course, one thing I left out is that scrolling bar at the bottom. I forgot to click that this morning. You can find me and share feedback with links and stuff you can see there, right there, j.mp/sustainwhatfeedback. And ideas for future episodes come that way too. So thanks again to my new virtual friends, Walt Lin and Andrew Lin, and also Aletta at Ohyay as well, and all the others there who are helping us all build a better online environment. And Ziv, say hi to everybody else at the Brown Institute too.
Will do.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.